What's up, gamers? Koobs here. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to 2024. Hope that this first week of the new year has been treating you well. Today we're taking a look at Dragon's Dogma, which is a fantastic RPG. If you've never played it before, hopefully this video will give you enough reason to check it out for yourself. Now, I've recently started a new playthrough of Dragon's Dogma, and shortly after I started my playthrough, I realized that the PlayStation Network has this game on sale currently. So right now it's about, I think it's like 85% off. The game is like $5, and it'll be that way on PSN until January 18th. So from the time of me putting out this video, you got a little less than 2 weeks to take advantage of that deal. $5, maybe $5.50 after tax, to check out a really awesome RPG with probably over 100 hours worth of content. And not only that, we also have Dragon's Dogma 2 right around the corner. The hype train has already left the station for that one. I mean, we're looking at March 22nd for the release of Dragon's Dogma 2. Looks like it's going to be an awesome game, and this could be a perfect opportunity for you to jump in with a low stakes investment, play the first game if you haven't before, get a feel for the systems and the mechanics and just the style of game in general, and see if the sequel is going to be worth your time and worth your money when it releases later this year. So starting off, you get to pick your class. In Dragon's Dogma, we call these Vocations. And starting off, you have 3 options in front of you. So you can be a fighter, which is going to be sword and shield. You have the Strider, which is kind of like a rogue archetype. So they have bows and they also have daggers. And then you can choose the mage. So these are the 3 starting vocations, and later on you will have access to a total of 9 vocations, and we'll touch on the vocation system in a little bit when we take a look at some more of those options. But the main thing is that from what I've seen regarding the new game, a lot of the gameplay systems seem very similar. The way that the combat flows seems similar, the vocational system seems similar, and the pawn system, which is basically your companions, I should say. In Dragon's Dogma, the way that it works is you create a pawn, which is your permanent companion that will always be in your party, and then you can recruit 2 other companions, 2 other pawns to round out your party. So between your main character and your permanent companion, you kind of get an idea of what sort of holes are going to be left in your party for you to fill with the replacement pawns that you can recruit. The fun thing about this system is that the pawn that you create can be recruited by other players, and the pawns that you're recruiting are the pawns that other players have made. I love the pawn system that they have in place here. I think it adds this cool layer to your companions that other games can sometimes shy away from. It's like each of the pawns that you recruit is somebody else's creation. And that adds this whole new layer of kind of like interconnectedness to the game. Even though it's a single player RPG that you're playing through by yourself, it's like you're almost influenced by the work of fellow gamers, if that makes sense. I just think it's such a cool system that they've come up with here. And again, this is going to be implemented into Dragon's Dogma 2, and I think that they're only going to expand on this whole concept. So I'm really excited to see what they come up with in that regard. So here we're taking a look at some skills. Now, when you want to level up different elements of your vocation, you spend basically an experience currency known as discipline. So by going out and fighting things in the overworld, you're going to gain discipline, and then you can spend discipline to learn new skills, gain new passives, and you can also use it to change your vocation. Now, one of the nice things about the discipline system is that if you decide to switch your vocation to, let's say you want to transition from being a fighter into a mage, you basically just have to spend the discipline to learn the mage vocation, and then whatever discipline you had will just carry over to that vocation, to that subclass. And so then you can continue to use the experience that you've acquired on leveling up this new vocation, learning new skills, and having a completely new play style. And then switching back and forth between the two, between fighter and between mage, is as easy as finding someone who can allow you to make that quick change happen. But once you have locked a certain vocation, you don't have to pay to unlock it again. And all of the experience and skills and the discipline that you spent on that vocation is still there. So really kind of nice in terms of switching up your play style. Like if you find yourself bored of a certain play style, or maybe you just really don't like one of the vocations that you've spent time and resources into, you can easily just switch that up and learn something new and check out one of the other 9 vocations and see one, find one that really speaks to you in that sense. And then as you level things up, you'll kind of unlock certain, like we looked at some skills there, but there are also passive abilities that you can get that are tied to different vocations, but you can use these passive abilities no matter which vocation you're using, if that makes sense. So let's say I go into the mage vocation and I find an ability, a passive ability that says that I take less magical damage. And then I go back to my fighter vocation and I choose to equip that passive ability under the fighter vocation. I now would still take that decreased magical damage, even though I'm not playing as a mage and I'm playing as my fighter again. Hopefully that makes sense. But so sometimes there are good reasons to kind of invest into these other vocations in order to acquire some of these passive abilities to better round out your build. Now, you don't necessarily have to, because a lot of times you're going to be kind of trying to manage where you're spending your discipline on new skills anyways. You're going to kind of be making decisions between, do I want to upgrade this ability? Do I want to get a new ability? Do I want to invest into a new passive? Different things like that. So there's a lot of depth to the vocation system and to leveling up, but it's also relatively straightforward at the same time. It's not overly complex. There's just depth to it, which I think is really great. So everything that we just discussed regarding the vocation system and spending discipline also applies to your permanent pawn companion. So you can change their vocation at any point, and you can also customize their skills and abilities to your own likeness. So again, it's almost like you have 2 main characters that you're leveling up and making these sort of decisions for, and then you're recruiting 2 other pawns that other players have put together to kind of round out your party. In the background here, we can see the other vocations that you can choose from. So again, fighter, strider, and mage are what you start with. The warrior subclass is kind of like an evolution of the fighter that uses 2-handed weapons. So instead of a sword and shield, you're now using like a 2-handed greatsword or a maul, whatever it might be. There's also the ranger subclass, which really kind of focuses a little bit more into the bow and arrow aspect of the strider, but they do still have access to daggers. And then there's the sorcerer, which kind of leans more into the magical damage side of things. So from my understanding, sorcerers will have kind of more powerful spells than a traditional mage will, but they don't necessarily have access to some of the supportive spells that mages have, like healing spells or different boons, which can kind of give you like a different damage type added to your weapon attacks. Like in the background here, we have a thunder boon that has been given to our character. So that's why our sword and shield is glowing. There are also 3 hybrid vocations. So there's the Mystic Knight, the Assassin, and the Arcane Archer. And these kind of blend 2 different vocations into one, giving you some really cool and fun new options in that regard. My initial playthrough, I played as an Arcane Archer for most of it, and I really enjoyed that particular vocation. And again, considering that Dragon's Dogma 2 is coming up fast, it seems like there are going to be more vocations for us to choose from and play around with, and that will lead to more hybrid vocations for us to explore. And so very much looking forward to seeing what they have cooked up for us. And again, this is just a wonderful time for you to jump in, experience some of these gameplay elements, experience the way that they have their combat system set up, the way that their leveling system is set up, the way that the pawns work and interact with each other, and different things like that before making that decision to see if Dragon's Dogma 2 is going to be worth your time and worth your money when it comes out in March. You'll also have access to the Dark Arisen DLC expansion, which takes place on Bitter Black Isle. So there is tons of content here for the $5 price tag. You really can't go wrong. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. I have been and always will be Coobs. Peace and love to you, gamers.
The master works all, you can't go wrong.